Welcome back to the Humble Rising podcast. I'm your host, Adivi Vargas, and I'm sitting down with my dear friend, my hermana, Ilhiana Rojas. Now, every time I sit down with her, I walk away with something I didn't know I needed, which is more clarity, an expanded perspective, and a reminder of what really matters. And I have a feeling that you'll feel the same after this episode. So just for background, if you haven't met her before, Ilhiana Rojas, she's a powerhouse. She is an executive coach and strategist with over 20 years of executive experience leading in Fortune 500 companies like P&G and Hasbro. She brings a grounded, real-world perspective to leadership, self-advocacy, and navigating change. And in this episode, she's back on the podcast to help us meet this moment. Now, right now, so many of us are feeling stretched thin. Emotionally, mentally, physically, professionally, personally, the whole spectrum. This is a really hard time. And it's also hard because you don't know when it's going to slow down and end. And the world just feels really heavy. And work still continues nonstop. And there are people getting laid off. And it's just so much going on that showing up with intention can feel more difficult than it ever has before. Because there's just so much coming at you. It is difficult to not react and to set your feet on the ground and decide how you're going to respond and decide who you want to be next. That's really tough to do in a moment like this. So in this episode, Ilhiana and I talk about why emotional intelligence and engagement are dropping and what we can do about it. We talk about how to advocate for ourselves in ways that feel real and genuine, not performative. We talk about the tension between humility and visibility, especially in communities of color, especially in the Latino culture, and how you can navigate between the two. How to take back control of our narrative. We talk a lot about the need to tell our stories, or they will be told for us and they will not be accurate. And then we talk about practical ways to lead and to speak up and to hold space for others, even when things feel as challenging as they do right now. So whether you're managing a team or trying to manage your own energy and trying to manage yourself, this conversation offers powerful reminders that how we show up intentionally and courageously can shift everything. This is a conversation for anyone who wants to rise and respond with purpose and help others do the same. I am so grateful to bring Ilhiana's voice and wisdom back to the podcast. She's one of one. So let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Ilhiana. Ilhiana, welcome back to the podcast. So good to have you back and so looking forward to our conversation.
I am excited to be here. We haven't chatted in a while, so I'm excited. A lot of things have changed, so this will be a great moment to catch up. So thank you for bringing me in again. I'm excited.
So Ilhiana, I know we talked a little bit before we hit record, and something that we've both been thinking about, you've been working a lot on this, and I'm more dipping my toe a little bit, but you are one of the leaders of this work, is I'd love for us to talk more about and for you to share how we as a community can meet this moment and show up for ourselves, our team, our colleagues, where we work, and our community. I would love for you to talk about some of the work that you're doing, because I think it'll be really helpful to a lot of people since we have all this overwhelm and stress and chaos and dehumanization, frankly. I think it'd be helpful for people to hear, what can I do within my realm of control, if anything?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it is very important. I don't know when your audience will be hearing this because it's out in the open and it'll stay in the digital space. But right now we're halfway through 2025. And oh my God, has it been a year of absolute disruption.
Mm.
And it's important for all of us to take a moment to pause and recognize what has happened through the first 6 months to each of us, right? What have we gone through? And center ourselves. Where do we want to end? What's the impact that we want to create at the end of this year? Because the reality is, it doesn't matter, where you stand in terms of your role, in terms of your title, in terms of your community, in terms of your industry, in terms of from a business perspective or entrepreneurship perspective. Everybody has gone through some kind of disruption, radical disruption, right? Everybody has gone through intense stress, through intense anxiety of not knowing what you're going to wake up to in the morning, what has changed in the world in the last 48 hours, to what you were saying, to a lot of impact in terms of aggressiveness, in terms of people, just being very at a heightened and at an elevated anger level, and high emotions always happening. If we look at the numbers right now from all the research that has come out this year, uh, emotions that are on all-time negative emotions that are an all-time high. People are on edge every day, all day, whether you're conscious about it or not conscious about it. And therefore, we are constantly reacting through our emotions versus through our rational thinking. And that has created, we're actually at an all-time low in emotional intelligence since, the beginning of COVID. That was an impact, but right now, with everything that's happening, again, there was a steep decline in emotional intelligence. We are at an all-time low in employee engagement. At a global level, we're at a 21%, which means that 80% of us around the world are going to work because we have to, not because we want to. We're dragging our feet to work. We're, living to survive versus living to thrive. We are leaders are in an all-time low in terms of their leadership competencies and the way that they practice leadership. Uh, from a community perspective, we are at a broken in a way where we're in an us versus them everyday reality, and therefore that keeps us on edge, and I can go on and on and on into all the things that we're living and breathing on a daily perspective, but it is important that we pause and that we understand and that we become conscious. How are all of these things impacting us in the way that we're showing up? And how do we want to show up as people, as humans, as leaders, as professionals for the next 6 months and be intentional every day? Because if not, then we're allowing all of these external forces to push us in maybe a direction that we don't wanna go, but, we don't realize it because 'cause we're going with the flow, we're going so fast. So now is the moment to take this intentional pause, recenter ourselves, and move forward, and that's what drives my everyday. It's being able to say, "Okay, where do I stand? What do I wanna do? And how can I show up with you and in all the spaces that I'm showing up to be able to create this awareness, be able to create reflection, and then be able to influence, in thought process and in the people that I interact with so that they can in turn show up in an intentional way, to drive, positive impact." Because I think we all that's what we all want in the bottom line. We just need to become aware of that.
What's the biggest challenge to that, Iana? To actually taking that pause and to start to be intentional and becoming a little bit more intentional each day.
We don't have time. This is the consistent theme no matter where I am, no matter what group I'm speaking with. The first thing that I hear is there is no time anymore. But there never has been time. It's time is a construct, right? We create time or we decide that there is no time because there is always time. There's always time to make yourself a cup of coffee. There's always time to say hello to somebody. There's always time to say, Arivi, I haven't chatted with you in a while. Let me send you a text and just say, good morning. How's this today treating you? What have you done? How are you feeling? Is there anything that I can do to help you? There is always time for intentional caring and for intentional active listening, for intentional empathy, for intentional, actions that can create and that can turn back, that can create meaningful connections with others, that can create spaces where others can feel also that they're allowed to slow down,
Mm.
that they're allowed to not be on the run every day, that we are allowed to just chit chat and connect with each other as people, as humans. Right? And those micro actions can make a significant difference in the world around us. And that can have beautiful trickle effects in as we move forward. But it really has to do with time and shifting our mindset from I don't have time to I do have time, and what can I do today to make a difference?
Yeah, I do have time, and what's that thing I'm gonna do today instead of what's the 20 things I'm gonna do today? Because then that can get overwhelming for a lot of people. So speaking of how we show up and the intentional actions we can take, talk a little bit about some of those actions or the ways that we can show up. So maybe we can start with yourself, make self-advocacy. So talk to us a little bit more about how we can double down on that, what it actually means in practice, I think would be really helpful.
Absolutely. And I would actually take a step even back
Mm,
into everyday defining. You sort of hinted to it into how am I going to show up today from the lens of what's my goal today? What's the one thing how am I going to change the world today?
mm,
And I think that's a great question that everybody should answer themselves, right? You should wake up in the morning not like, this is the checklist of the 25 things that I need to do, versus how am I going to be intentional in changing the world today, in making it, more inclusive, in being able to making it for people to feel better. I always hear from every leader that I speak with, everybody wants to help others.
mm,
So how do you want to help others? And what are you doing today to to do that? Right. So it starts with your goal, first of all, and what do you want to accomplish? And then the self-advocacy piece, it's then how do I let others know how I can help them, right? How do let others know the value that I bring to the table so that I can, so that people look at me, so that I elevate my voice, so that the impact that I'm creating is actually seen from a broader lens than just me telling it to myself and
mm,
assuming that everybody knows what I wanna do. And I think especially as the Hispanic community, one of our most amazing values of humility
mm,
sometimes becomes a barrier
mhm,
to self-advocacy and becomes a barrier to how I'm showing up, and elevating my voice because it feels like bragging, because it might feel that I'm talking in an I versus talking in our we, right? The way that we normally talk, because we're community centered, we're family centered versus individually centered. And self-advocacy, it's about the I, not about the we. So there's like this counter intuitive to our value, but we need to shift our mindset to recognize, uh, I need to put the mask on first and let people know, that this is the value that I bring, so that I can then bring everybody with me, so that then I can reach this goal of how I'm changing the world today. So it's all tied. It's not, you can't do one without the other. You need to do all of these and be very intentional. How am I going to let other people know the value that I bring, so that I can actually drive that and influence that change to get to that goal?
Yeah, and I love that you identify the tension there that sometimes exists. And one of the one thing I always share with people is that you really are honoring every single person that came before you when you speak up with your voice, because they probably didn't have that opportunity. And so if you're to be in a place where now you're able to do that, they couldn't teach you how to do that because that wasn't their world, that wasn't their reality, but it now is yours. And so now here's your opportunity to, like you said, shift your mindset, get uncomfortable, and keep practicing in that discomfort. And I've seen it. I know you've seen it too, Liana, with their clients, but you see the discomfort, and then they're like, months later, they're like, oh, this is now what I do. It becomes part of who you are. And what a beautiful thing to see, like a transformation like that. But it does start with recognizing, here's something that I need to work on. Here's what I'm going to do in the moment each day. And I'm going to follow through. Like, I'm not going to make excuses, son. I'm not going to make excuses why it won't work. I'm going to say, okay, this is why it could work. And I'm going to give it a shot.
Absolutely. And I think the other piece to think about it is taking control of our own narrative. So that's what self-advocacy is. It's not letting others make assumptions about who you are and what it is that you do, and saying, my work is going to speak for me, or my leader is going to speak for me, or others that know me are going to speak for me. The problem, but when we do that, is that we're then giving them, right, the authority over our story, the authority over our value. We're giving we don't realize that by doing that, we're giving our power away to others, so that then they control the narrative, or of who we are, of our story, and what it is that we bring to the table. And unfortunately, the majority of the times, that narrative, if said by others, is incorrect. And not because nobody intentionally does that, but because they might be saying something that is because it's based on their perception of
Right.
their experience of you, right? And it might not be what you want them to say. And I'll add my own personal example, which I hear again and again from other people, right? There's this sense of, if you want to be seen as a thought leader, as a change maker, as somebody that wants to get to that next level, but maybe people are saying, oh, that person is so caring and is always a go-getter and doing things. The narrative becomes, you are an excellent executor, not
Yes.
necessarily you're a good leader.
Right. Oh, yes.
Right? And in order
That
to
resonates.
those
Yeah.
positions, in order to get to those next level positions, you want to be seen as a leader. You want to be seen as somebody that influences. So being seen as as somebody that executes perfectly and that is a go-getter doesn't get you to that other perception, or that other perspective. So you need to be in control of the narrative, and that's what self-advocacy is all about, so that you can say, this is how I'm changing the spaces that I'm in. This is what I accomplish. This is how I influence. This is what I'm thinking. This is how I'm envisioning for this project, this initiative, this situation, to shift and change. These are my This is how I'm challenging status quo. This is, like all of these ways to show that we have those leadership practices, that mindset, those behaviors. But if we allow others to talk about us, then they might say things that don't position us as leaders, that just position us as, somebody that's good to have on your side, or in a different, uh, with not the necessary competencies or knowledge or experience that you want to showcase, right? So taking control of our narrative, um, and how are we taking control of our narrative every day is part of this intentionality of saying, how am I going to elevate my voice today, in the right direction?
Yes, I that resonates so much because there are so many people who are told that they're like, you're excellent execution, but their dreams are actually to be like a vice president or an SVP or even a C-suite executive, and the measures change. And sometimes you don't realize it because because what you've been doing has made you successful, right? To that point. When you want to get to a new level, you have to kind of operate and move a little bit differently, and you're not really taught how to do that. This is another reason why your point earlier about humility and keeping your head down, this is where it doesn't serve you, because you have to get your head up and be connecting with people. There is this, I was watching this interview with an actor who had been in the business for a very long time, and he was talking about success in the industry. And he said, we tell our kids that if you work hard, just do what you need to do an excellent job, and you will be successful. And he said, I don't think that's necessarily true anymore. I see it in the industry where someone is coming up with less experience, but is able to influence in a way that other people can't. They come in 5, 10 years of experience, and they're in the big movie. When you see people that have been there for 30, 40 years who don't get that opportunity. And he said, success isn't always earned, it's chosen. Someone chooses you and says, I want you, I'm going to groom you. And I think that's why for so many reasons, that can feel so intimidating for a lot of us. Because one, you have to be able to put yourself in rooms with very senior people. And I know in like the Latino culture, seniority can be intimidating. Authority, quote unquote, authority can be intimidating to us because of how we were raised. But that's where the magic happens, is you actually, you sharing and getting to know others and letting them getting to see who you are, because then they can tap you. But if they don't know who you are, and if you don't make the effort, you can't get tapped. And not everybody that you reach out to is going to tap you, right? Like, so then, because then what happens is then you reach out to 3 people who don't respond to you or don't want to be that person for you, and then you give up. You say, okay, it doesn't work. Well, no. Ilhiana, how many people throughout your whole career, did you meet with and speak with who eventually did tap you, but not everybody does that. Not everybody will choose you. So I think that's another point about not keeping your head down and stepping into like the power you already have to advocate for yourself and let yourself be known, like be really known for what you want to do.
Absolutely, and I think now more than ever, being in control of our narrative is crucial, because the narrative that is being told out there in general in the media, and especially for Latinos, is not a good one.
Yeah.
Right? And we know that that is not true, but that is the narrative that it's being told. So we need to bring back and be in control of our narrative, not only within our spaces, of in our community, but we need to really take it up a notch to make sure that we share the reality of, the hardworking, the integrity, the commitment, all of these amazing values that we hold as a community, that we hold as a group, as a Hispanic group, and that we are right now one of the most important groups, especially in the United States, in terms of the contribution that we bring from a GDP perspective, and we don't realize that. And so taking control back of this narrative and being able to understand the impact that our voice has in how we choose to show up, and how we choose to support others, and how we choose to spend our money, right? It becomes, we're at this crux in time where it can go either way. And we all need to take on that responsibility of we need to all now be joined together and push forward for the benefit of our community, and to your point, like the people that are coming behind us, right? Not only our direct family or the direct people that we know, but everybody else that's coming.
Mhm.
We can't just allow for others to take control of the narrative.
Mhm.
And I firmly believe that it is part of our responsibility. So that is an important thing, that we need to become conscious on the intentionality of how we show up every day.
So what's like a concrete thing that someone who, maybe in or outside of the corporate or work context, like how can we take control more of our narrative, advocate for ourselves, and be more inclusive? Like, how do we do that? What's one thing we can start with?
I think there are several things that we need to do. First of all, it's about not only how do we elevate our voice, but how are we opening spaces so that other people, sort of inviting other people to elevate their voice as well. So that is one. And that could be in terms of, if we see in a meeting that there are certain people that are not, that are, laid back, that want to say something, or that they don't find the space to open up, it's just saying, hey, calling them out, right? Arivi, you haven't said anything. Is there something that you want to share today? And that way you open the space, right? That's one. The second thing has to do with courage and speaking up when there are situations that may be putting others to the side and creating a space that is not safe for others to feel that they're heard, that they're seen, that they're valued. So if you see behaviors that might exclude others, we need to call them out, and we need to say, hey, uh, if somebody's not calling somebody else by their correct pronouns, you can call it out and say, I believe their pronouns are he, him, or she, hers, or them. And I just think that it would be nice to follow that, or maybe calling out on other behaviors, like, you've talked now too much, you're not creating a space for others. Like, let's give everybody some time to be able to speak up. Or, I don't think that word that you're using, it's making me feel uncomfortable, and I imagine that I'm not the only one that's feeling uncomfortable in this moment. So things like we have to have the courage every day to show up for ourselves and for others, to create those psychologically safe spaces. And then thinking about, if we see practices that are not equitable for everybody, that might be excluding others, calling them out and saying, hey, what are we doing to change the opportunity that these other groups might not have, and being in this moment, right? I'm always bringing people along to the places that people invite me. I'm like, okay, who can I bring with me?
Yeah.
Who can I ask that they can be there, right? How can I connect you with so and so that they can then have the opportunity to shine? Like, we need to always think about, how can we use our voice, our influence, our privilege to then create spaces for other people. And those are just like a handful of some of the things that we can do.
Yeah, I think one of the themes, I mean, you called it out, courage, but I think courage is one of the most important things, because we don't just have it, we have to generate it in that moment, right, Ilhiana? When someone mispronounces someone's name, in that moment, you gotta in the moment say, hey, oh, it's this instead. Like people do that with my name all the time. And I know that for a fact in my previous job, I know for a fact that there were people in rooms that I wasn't in where my name was mentioned and a person would say, it's Aribi. It's not Aribe, right? So I think that that is really powerful to have people who in the moment, this is what I do is like, I'm going to correct you. And by the way, it's not a big deal. Meaning correcting in the moment when you make it a big deal, it becomes a big deal. But if you just say, oh, hey, like what you were saying in the meeting, like it just made me a little bit uncomfortable. This is what you said. This is the impact it had on me. And I just wanted to talk to you about it. And I've done that before with people, Liana. I've done that before with people. And the conversations, to me, they've always gone well when you enter it open-minded. So really, really powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, it's about this intentionality that we have to have every day. Like I said, how are we waking up, and how are we going to change the world today? How are we going to create spaces? How are we going to elevate voices? How are we going to advocate for ourselves and others? Like I think that takes intentionality on a daily basis.
Yes. And I love that we have the power to do that. We don't have to rely on external forces to do that. Ilhiana, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I love having you on it. I love all of your experience and your perspective because you bring so much lived and real experience to your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and we'll just have to continue to make these, right? We can make a
Yes.
series of these and give people a couple of tips that they can think about every day. Because you're right, sometimes we might want to do something, but we might not know how. But hearing from others, we can get inspiration.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.